Have you ever felt like the world is falling apart around you, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't find your balance? Maybe it's not the world that's the problem. Maybe it's the way we meet the storm. Chaos isn't new. Fear isn't modern. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius sat in a war tent, surrounded by enemies, plague, and betrayal. And he wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it." Not because he was unaffected, but because he had learned to stand. That image, of being the rock, might seem impossible when life pulls us in every direction. The emails that never stop. The war on the news. The bank account that shrinks. The future that feels like fog. And yet, the Stoics believed, it is exactly here, in the eye of the storm, where a human being can rise, not above the chaos, but through it. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of the damage, he wrote to his friend Lucilius, comes not from the blows life delivers, but from the panic we create before they land. We die 1,000 deaths before we're even wounded. We break down from the fear of collapse, not the collapse itself. So what's the answer? It's not denial. It's not pretending things are fine. Stoicism doesn't ask you to fake calm. It demands something harder: clarity. Courage. A ruthless refusal to let what's outside control what's inside. Imagine this: your life is a fortress. The world throws fire at the walls, your job, your relationships, your health. But the Stoics built their strength not on the walls, but at the center, in the citadel of the soul. They asked only one question: can this destroy who I am? If the answer is no, then let it burn. Chaos is not a curse. It's a crucible. Seneca put it best when he said, "True greatness is tested by fire." Do you think an unscarred boxer is ready for the ring? No. The Stoic knows, pain is not an enemy. It's the price of becoming unshakable. We don't get to choose the era we live in. We don't get to vote on the tragedies or losses. But we always get to choose how we show up. That's the gift of Stoicism. It returns your power, not by changing the world, but by changing your stance in it. So the next time you feel the weight pressing in, remember this: the storm may be loud, but you are the silence beneath it. The noise may rise, but you can still walk steady. Because you are not your panic. You are not your fear. You are not the chaos. You are the calm that meets it. But what does it mean, to be the calm? It's a beautiful idea. Poetic. Inspiring. But in practice, it feels impossible when your hands are shaking, when your heart races, when the future looks like a collapsing bridge. The Stoics never promised peace without effort. They didn't preach perfection. What they offered was a path, a hard, honest one, toward mastering the only thing you truly own, your mind. Epictetus was born a slave. His body wasn't even his own. He walked with a limp, possibly from being beaten by his master. And yet, he said, some things are up to us, and some are not. That line is the blade that cuts through modern chaos. Let's sit with that. Some things are up to you. Some things aren't. Can you control whether you lose your job tomorrow? No. Can you control the market, the economy, the war, the weather, or someone else's opinion of you? No. But can you control how you react? Yes. Can you control whether you let panic take over? Yes. Can you train your mind not to follow every fear like a dog on a leash? Absolutely. That is your power. That is your kingdom. The chaos of the world only becomes your own if you open the gate and invite it in. Most people do this without realizing it. They scroll through catastrophe every morning, drinking in disasters with their coffee. They call it staying informed, but really, they're practicing helplessness. The Stoic, on the other hand, trains in awareness. Not passivity. Not numbness. But choice. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself every morning, you will meet ungrateful people, liars, the arrogant, the jealous, and the cruel. Not to become cynical, but to expect reality, and meet it with calm. There is a strange freedom that comes when you no longer expect the world to be gentle. When you no longer expect fairness or predictability. You begin to prepare instead of panic. You begin to armor the mind, not the schedule. Because schedules fall apart. But clarity, that stays. Imagine going into a storm already knowing your coat will be soaked, your boots will be muddy, and the wind will howl. You're not surprised anymore. You're steady. You move forward anyway. That's the Stoic stance. Not, everything is fine. But, I can stand, even when it's not. Now pause for a moment. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Not just busy, but deeply anxious. Out of control. Your mind probably jumped from problem to problem, like a fire trying to find oxygen. That's what Seneca warned us about. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When we're scattered, mentally chasing 1,000 worries, we're not really in our lives at all. We're ghosts, pulled in every direction by fears that haven't happened yet. This is where Stoicism gets practical. Focus. One thought. One task. One breath. Seneca wrote that life is long enough, if you know how to use it. But most of us don't. We lose days to distraction, weeks to anger, months to fear. We live in a constant rehearsal of disaster, and then we wonder why we feel exhausted. The Stoic learns to stop this cycle. To cut the loop. To say, enough. Try this. The next time your mind starts spiraling, ask yourself, is this helping me act, or just feeding my fear? Most of the time, the answer will be obvious. And you'll have a choice. Not a magical fix. But a doorway. You walk through that doorway each time you decide to return to the present. To your breath. To the work in front of you. To the person you're speaking with. That's the Stoic meditation, not on mountains, not in silence, but in the noise of daily life. In the office. On the train. In the middle of an argument. Because chaos isn't just war and disaster. Sometimes it's the unread emails, the dishes in the sink, the bills stacking on the table. The Stoic doesn't wait for peace to begin practicing peace. They train exactly there, in the mess. And with time, something changes. You start to feel it. The quiet gap between the stimulus and your reaction. The pause before the anger. The breath before the worry. That's where your freedom lives. It's not about never falling. You will. We all do. The Stoic simply gets back up faster, cleaner, more aware. They don't drown in guilt or shame. They observe. They learn. They move forward. And that, in a chaotic world, is a radical act. You might be wondering, how do you actually live like this? It all sounds powerful in theory, but how do you practice Stoicism when your life is on fire? When your child is sick? When your partner leaves? When you're laid off without warning? When the very ground beneath you seems to shift and split? It starts with one idea: you are not your circumstances. This is not detachment in the cold, uncaring sense. It's not denial. It's the fiercest kind of clarity. The Stoics understood that identity is something internal. Circumstances may describe your situation, but they do not define your soul. Think of a tree in winter. The leaves are gone, the bark is frozen, the wind cuts through the branches, but the roots? Still there. Still gripping the earth. Still alive. You are not the weather that surrounds you. You are the roots beneath it. That's what Marcus Aurelius was writing to himself in those quiet moments before battle. Reminding himself that even if the empire collapses, even if everything falls, his character, his choices, remain his own. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's not just a philosophical idea. It's a challenge. A dare. To look at the thing that scares you most and say, I don't have to let this poison my soul. You can feel grief, without becoming bitterness. You can feel fear, without becoming chaos. You can be surrounded by noise, and still cultivate silence inside. But that silence won't appear on its own. You have to fight for it. You have to practice it, daily. When Marcus wrote his Meditations, he never meant for anyone to read them. They were notes to himself. Reminders. Corrections. Little anchors to hold his mind steady. You can do the same. You don't need a marble desk or ancient scrolls. Just a quiet minute. A question. A breath. Ask yourself, in any moment of confusion or panic, is this under my control? What does my nature ask of me right now? What would a wise, calm person do in this situation, and why can't that be me? The moment you ask that, something shifts. You step out of the storm, if only for a second. You stop reacting, and start responding. And that's everything. Because life doesn't reward panic. It rewards presence. It rewards steadiness. Even a few seconds of clarity can change the course of a conversation. A day. A decision. Seneca said, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful than the injury that provokes it." The same is true of fear. Of anxiety. Of resentment. We often do more damage in our response than the world ever intended. But here's the hope in that: it means we can stop the damage. Not by fixing the world, but by fixing how we carry it. And that's the hidden promise of Stoicism. You don't have to escape the chaos. You have to stop letting it live inside you. Picture yourself walking through a burning city. Smoke, sirens, panic. But your mind, clear. Your heart, steady. Not cold. Not numb. Just calm. Like still water beneath a storm. That's not fantasy. That's training. It doesn't happen overnight. But each time you choose patience over rage, courage over avoidance, humility over pride, you take one more step toward becoming unshakable. Not perfect. Just solid. Like the rock Marcus spoke of. And over time, people notice. They come to you in crisis. They trust your voice in the dark. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're not flailing. You're not feeding the fire. You've become a quiet presence in a loud world. And perhaps that's the greatest act of rebellion in an age like ours. Not to scream louder. But to speak less, and mean more. Not to control others. But to master yourself. Not to win the chaos. But to refuse to be consumed by it. That's Stoicism in practice. It doesn't make you immune to pain. It makes you worthy of it. It makes you capable of bearing it, not as a victim, but as a participant in the human story. As someone who, like Marcus, like Seneca, like Epictetus, chooses to turn suffering into strength. The world may not change. But you will. And that changes everything. The truth is, chaos is a constant. It's not a glitch in the system. It is the system. The sooner you stop waiting for peace to arrive, the sooner you can start creating it inside. The Stoics never told us we could control the waves. They told us we could learn to sail. To steer. To endure. And eventually, to feel the wind without fear. You see, the world is full of noise. Scrolling feeds of conflict, fear, opinions, illusions of success. And most people? They're addicted to it. Addicted to outrage, comparison, the next thing. The Stoic watches all this, not with arrogance, but with distance. With discipline. With compassion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That's more radical than it sounds. In a culture that tells you to have a take on everything, every second, this is a form of quiet rebellion. The rebellion of inner stillness. Because every opinion costs energy. Every emotional reaction drains you. And unless it's rooted in something essential, something aligned with your values, your principles, it pulls you away from your center. But what is that center? It's not some mystical place. It's your reason. Your choices. Your character. The Stoics trained themselves to return to that center again and again. To become immune not to pain, but to panic. Not to sorrow, but to surrendering their integrity. You can do the same. How? Pause. Observe. Choose. Don't just react to the world. Respond to it, with intention. Imagine you're in a crowded room full of shouting voices, flashing lights, sudden alarms. Everyone's panicking, pushing, grabbing. And in the middle of it, you stand still. Eyes open. Breathing slow. Not because you're cold. But because you refuse to become part of the madness. That stillness, that's what you train for. That's what daily Stoic practice builds. Not ego. Not superiority. Just clarity. Clarity is your superpower. When others are overwhelmed, clarity acts. When others are consumed, clarity decides. When others chase illusions, clarity returns to what matters. It doesn't mean you're untouched by hardship. You'll still feel pain. You'll still grieve. You'll still get angry. But you won't be owned by it. You'll experience your emotions, not become them. There's a difference between feeling fear and being fear. The Stoic feels it, accepts it, and acts anyway. Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. That imagination, that theater of worst-case scenarios, it's where most of our suffering lives. It's where the chaos turns inward. But when you become aware of that, when you catch your mind inventing disasters, that's your chance to interrupt the pattern. To reclaim yourself. To speak back to the voice of panic, not with denial, but with strength. This is not under my control. But my response is. This is difficult. But I am not helpless. This is painful. But I will endure. Every time you say this, you grow. Not taller. Not louder. But deeper. Stronger in a way no one can see, but everyone will feel. And here's the strange thing. When you live like this long enough, the world starts to change, not because it's different, but because you are. You stop expecting smooth seas. You stop craving constant comfort. You stop needing everything to go your way. And you start asking better questions. What is this moment calling me to become? What virtue is this difficulty asking me to develop? What kind of person would rise to meet this, calm, grounded, clear? That's the Stoic transformation. Not the absence of chaos, but the presence of courage within it. So when the world screams, you don't. When life shakes, you don't crumble. You remain. Not as a statue, but as a human being who has practiced the ancient, quiet art of not losing yourself in the noise. You begin to walk differently. Speak differently. Not better than others, but more in control of yourself. That's what draws people to you. Not charm. Not success. But presence. And slowly, you become what the Stoics called a citadel within. A person the world can't break, not because you've avoided the fire, but because you've walked through it, eyes open, soul intact. That's the path. That's the training. That's the gift. So here you are. Still standing. Maybe tired. Maybe bruised. Maybe wondering if any of this really works, if Stoicism is just words, or if it can actually carry you through the mess of real life. Let me tell you something the Stoics knew, something they didn't say with trumpets or banners, but with their lives. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to post itself online. Real strength is quiet. It's invisible. It's the moment you don't break when no one's watching. The moment you choose calm when everything in you wants to scream. The moment you hold your dignity, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line isn't poetry. It's a mirror. It stares back at you in every difficult moment and asks, now? Will you live it now? Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Now. In the heat. In the dark. In the chaos. Because that's when philosophy is tested. That's when everything you've read, everything you've practiced, either becomes real, or vanishes. The Stoics weren't chasing serenity. They were preparing for war. Not with swords, but with themselves. Against their ego. Their fear. Their impulses. Every day, they trained, not for comfort, but for confrontation with fate. And now it's your turn. Not because you asked for this moment. Not because you feel ready. But because you're alive, and to be alive is to be thrown, again and again, into the unknown. Here's the thing most people never realize: Stoicism doesn't protect you from the storm. It teaches you how to become the storm, disciplined, clear, purposeful. Not destructive, but unstoppable. To meet insult with dignity. To meet fear with thought. To meet loss with grace. That's power. That's beauty. That's peace, earned, not given. You see, chaos isn't your enemy. It's your training ground. The late nights, the uncertainty, the heartbreak, the moments when the future goes black, those are not interruptions. They're invitations. Invitations to rise. To shed what no longer serves you. To rebuild yourself on something solid. Every time you fall and choose to rise without bitterness, you grow. Every time you face what terrifies you and do not run, you become more than you were. And not in some mythical way. In the most human way possible. Because what the Stoics understood is this: the greatest victory is not over others. It's over the self. It's the ability to say, today I will not be ruled by rage. Today I will not be owned by fear. Today I will not trade my peace for something I cannot control. You will fail at this. We all do. That's not the point. The point is to return. To come back to yourself, again and again and again. Until that return becomes your habit. Until your center becomes so strong that the world can howl all at once, and you remain steady. Not untouched. But unmoved in the ways that matter. Because in the end, life won't ask how much you owned. Or how many followers you had. Or how perfectly you managed to control the world. Life will ask only this. Were you present? Were you courageous? Did you live according to what you truly believe? That's the Stoics' test. And the Stoics' reward. So I leave you with this: next time the chaos rises, and it will, don't shrink. Don't complain. Don't wait for it to pass. Meet it. Meet it with the full strength of your character. With your values sharp like blades. With your reason like a shield. With your presence as your power. Because in a world addicted to reaction, your stillness is a revolution. In a time of noise, your clarity is a force. In an age of chaos, your calm is a gift, to yourself, and to everyone around you. You don't need the world to be peaceful to live with peace. You just need to remember who you are. And live like it.